Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel, and today we return for part 2 of the controversial opinions episode, because part 1 went down a charm. We were all so well behaved and normal in the comments section. Controversial opinions, eh? That's what it does to a man. If you haven't already, please make sure to go down below, hit like and subscribe. It would be much appreciated as we try and get towards 50,000 subscribers. And finally, you can join the 118 or Thunder Club by using the top line of the description or that join button beside the subscribe button. If you want to become a member, that would also be appreciated. Anyway, let's get into this, shall we? So yesterday we done part 1 of a controversial opinions video, where I realised quickly towards the end that we didn't have enough time to fit all of the controversial opinions from you guys in the one video. I asked you, did you want a part 2? And the response in the comments section seems to be straightforward. Yes, you wanted part 2. Can we fit everyone into this episode? Well, we'll soon see, but I'm hoping this is the last one we need to do for quite a while, because these controversial opinions do stir up quite the discussion in the comments section. Nonetheless, we all know how it works by now. We're just going to return to the field. We're going to continue on from yesterday. If you missed part 1, I urge you to go and check that out before this. Let's get into some opinions today, shall we? I'm sure they'll be outstanding reading. So, of course, I put this tweet on the Celtic the Thunder podcast account yesterday morning asking for your controversial Celtic opinions. Yesterday we spoke about the Derby allocation at Celtic Park. We spoke about the strength of the current Celtic squad. We had opinions on who's had the greatest individual campaign since Henrik Larsson. We had quite a lot to talk about today. I want to take that to the next level, and hopefully the comments, which I've kept a surprise to myself by the way, will deliver. I have not looked and planned ahead as to what's going to be featured in this video, so yeah, the face of shock, the reactions, they're genuine. Let's do this, shall we? So today we start with Dougie, who has what you could call a controversial opinion. He says the play style of Ange and Brendan have held us back in Europe more than our finances. See European results under Lenny with a similar level squad, second in the Champions League in 2012-2013 and first in the Europa League in 2019-2020. That's a really interesting one, and I suppose you could argue that point, that maybe it's not just the financial gulf that means Celtic are falling behind these other sides. You look especially under Ange Postecoglou, where we had a very plan A only approach to European football and it didn't quite work out. You could say that that was the reason that we were knocked out that year, especially because we competed with the teams in our group. We should have done better, we should have got more points. Maybe at the end of the day it was the style of football that season. The same with last year. You know, we competed with those teams. The style of football maybe in the end cost us that goal or two that maybe held us back from finishing third in the group. There's a lot to it, I think, the European question and what holds Celtic back. It's a number of different factors. I don't necessarily think you can pin it on one, because one thing is for sure, you can't necessarily just blame the financial gulf. We have seen plenty of teams in Europe put that financial gulf behind them and do so much better than Celtic year after year. Not just like one odd team doing it as a fluke. No, every single year there are teams from Scandinavia, from Switzerland, from Eastern Europe, from wherever across this continent who don't get the money that the top 5 leagues do, and they manage to make a much better account of themselves than Celtic. So there's a number of factors, 100%, and the style of football could be one of them. What I will say is, I feel like using the 2012 campaign is always a bit harsh and a bit hard, because I think that football has changed even significantly in that 10 years that's passed since then. I think, you know, from 2013 onwards, football has taken an even bigger change than what it did to the years leading up to 2012. I think the financial gulf has only got wider and wider and wider, so going that far back I think is a bit harsh on Rodgers, on Ange. But we'll see this year. I think there is a number of factors. What do you think? Do you think it's just the style of football that's to blame? Controversial? I don't think it's that controversial to maybe say that. This one popped up yesterday quite a lot, actually, didn't it? That Johnson is better than Juranovic. We had a lot of people saying, and a lot of people agreeing, that Juranovic was overrated as a Celtic player. That seems to be an occurring trend, to the point where it's not even becoming a controversial opinion, because there seems to be so many people with that opinion. But I agree that he's better. Miles better could be insulting to Juranovic, but this is the best squad we've had in years, said Bernardo Boy. Listen, I can't reiterate this point enough. We'll make that judgment for the next few months, won't we? Because it's easy to say that now, and then in December we could always say in January we need 4 or 5 players. Depends how Europe goes. So we're a very fickle bunch, we're a very reactionary bunch of Celtic supporters. I think it's too early to tell if this is the best squad we've had in years, but certainly on paper it's looking like it could go that way. I love this, and I tweeted this the other day, thank you, and I don't care, people in the comment section are going to shoot me for this, right? I prefer the broken hoops in the back of European kits with the different font. Looks smarter, looks cleaner. Yes, 100% yes. Controversial if you like. I'm going to go a step further. I don't care about broken hoops in general. See, when a home shirt comes out and there's broken hoops on it, I don't get the whole hoop should never be broken. I think sometimes it actually makes the kits look a bit nicer. I don't think it matters if a hoop goes all the way around the shirt, if it's broken by some design on the side or whatnot. If the hoops are still there on the front of the shirt at the end of the day, that's all that matters. That's my opinion on it. That is a controversial one because I know that winds people up, the whole broken hoops thing. I don't care, and I agree. I think that the European home kits look better than the league home kits with the block white on the back. And this new one, the one that's the new printing for this season, chef's kiss, amazing. Bernard saying that Celtic will break their away curse in the Champions League more than once this season. Wow. I mean, we've got 4 tough away games, haven't we? We've got Aston Villa down in Birmingham. We've got Borussia Dortmund at the Westfalenstadion. We've got Atalanta in Bergamo. Club Brugge in Bruges. I think is that the other one? Can't remember who's home and who's away now. Nonetheless, really tough set of away games. To break it more than once, that is perhaps an outlandish statement. I would be happy with 1 win on the road. I don't care who it's against. I don't care if it's Villa, Dortmund, whoever. I would be happy with 1 win. If we can win all of our games, or at least not lose all of our games at Celtic Park, and win one of those away games, I think we can put ourselves in a good position. But if we could break it more than once, Bernard, I would say that's more ambition than controversial. I've only just realised now at time of recording that I kept saying Bernard here, but it's probably Bernard. I spent too long talking about Paulo Bernardo that it's just drilled into my head. Anyway, Bernard, thanks for your point. Regan says that the board are scared to bury Rangers because they don't want to lose all competition in the league. And I feel like that's an opinion that has become more prominent in recent years. I think that's one that more and more people are starting to agree with, that Celtic as a football club behind the scenes don't want to fully bury Rangers because it might do damage to the league and the ramifications might have a wider effect on Celtic than what we think. TV deals could potentially go out the window, sponsorships could potentially go out the window. Celtic would be swimming in a pond of hoping for Champions League money every year to carry them through. Is that necessarily the right way to operate? I mean, it's all very conspiracy-like, isn't it? I don't know what the opinions of Michael Nicholson are, of Peter Lawwell are. It's all kind of hearsay, isn't it? But I would not be shocked if there is an element of that at Celtic, because over the past decade, since Rangers have returned to the top flight, we have had numerous occasions where we could have buried Rangers for a generation. And that's not a controversial opinion. That's fact. Celtic could have long left Rangers in the dirt and the dust in the back, but we haven't. And is there a deeper reason for that? Well, that's one for your video essays, not for me today to speculate. Let's do what we done yesterday. Let's quick fire a few of these, shall we? Carol Starfelt is a top... we got that one yesterday. Jake, you're getting 2 shout-outs. Count yourself lucky. But this relates to this one here from Brandon, who says Carol Starfelt was overhated and he was a massive player for us. We miss his pace at the back. I don't think that's controversial at all. I think that people who did hate on him were being foolish, to be quite honest. So I don't think that's a controversial opinion by any means, Brandon. I agree with you. I think he was overhated, and I think most people would agree with that. Here's one that might be controversial though. Ida isn't good enough to play in the Champions League. Well, that is controversial, isn't it? We've spent £8.5 million on the guy. He's coming in a fee that could rise to £9.5 million. He hasn't played in Europe at all in his career, not with Norwich. Of course, he joined Celtic when we were already out of the Champions League. I think it's too early to make that prediction if he's good enough or not to play in the Champions League, but I certainly think that it's becoming an edgy opinion amongst the Celtic support to hate on Adam Ida, to root against him. I feel like it's become this edgy opinion just because of the price tag that's been slapped on him. I think the guy has done nothing but good since coming to Celtic. He's came in on a permanent transfer and not scored yet, but you know, he's played very limited minutes in his 2 appearances since signing back. Far too premature to tell if he's good enough or not to play in the Champions League. And I would just urge the Celtic support to back him, because I think it's really tedious to see this. And I'm not necessarily saying you, Declan, are guilty of this, but I think there's plenty of supporters who are guilty of it, who just don't want Ida to succeed, and I think it's really strange. Okay, quick fire again. Let's get through a few. O'Reilly is another level than Rogic ever was, and it shouldn't be a conversation. I think, is this the same Declan? It is the same Declan. I'll agree with you in this one, though. I wouldn't say it's maybe not. I wouldn't go as far to say there's no conversation there, but O'Reilly is a better player than Tom Rogic. He is, and I think as much as we all love Rogic, I think the fact that he's got a £30 million move to the Premier League is all the proof that you need of that. Tom Rogic's never got a £30 million move to the Premier League, and maybe it's down to fitness and consistency, but it's a huge part of football, and Matt O'Reilly is fit, he's consistent, he's a better player. Wizard Morto saying that Greg Taylor is one of the best left backs we've ever had, or we have had at least. He always gets abuse for being small, but he's absolutely quality when he's going good. I mean, I don't know if he's one of the best left backs we've had. I think he's one of the best we've had in the last decade, because we've had a real lack of good left backs in the last decade, since Aguirre's kind of golden era. But he gets too much abuse. I've said this before. Taylor's a solid player. He does the job. Maybe he's not that first team quality when it comes to Europe that you're looking for. But listen, he always puts a shift in. He deserves a new contract. And Wizard Mortal, listen, I like him, and yeah, his abuse is probably a bit over the top. And just to finish off this quickfire segment very quickly, thank you for chipping in with the absolute nonsense that these videos require. We should have kept Shane Duffy, and Effie Ambrose would still do a job at the back. 100%. I agree with both statements, clearly. Brother Teresa with an interesting take. This is one I actually do want to discuss. Hiring Lenny in the showers at Hampden wasn't the direct cause of blowing 10 in a row. And I think this is a really interesting one, because I think that if you were to take a survey from Celtic supporters, every Celtic supporter, on why we buggered the 10 and why it didn't happen, I think the majority would say Neil Lennon. It's Neil Lennon. Neil Lennon is the reason. Him getting the showers was the reason. And I think it would probably be controversial to say it wasn't. But I think that I kind of agree with what Brother Teresa say. Neil Lennon is a huge reason for the fact that it never happened. There's no denying that. Of course he is. And he deserves to take a lot of the stick for it. But I don't know if he's the direct cause. I think that Brother Teresa actually raises a very good point. I think that the 10 in a row being bottled is a culmination of errors that happened at Celtic over a 3 or 4 year stretch. And that included, well, Brendan Rodgers was there. Despite how good we looked, behind the scenes there was things going on that Brendan Rodgers called out and walked out on, which were clearly an impact of why we bottled the 10 in a row. Brendan Rodgers was clever enough to see it and leave the situation where he could, because he realised, I'm not getting back to you. Neil Lennon was the guy who was brave enough, and maybe the only man who was brave enough, to take on the challenge. Maybe he was the only man offered to take on the challenge. We'll never truly know. He was offered the job in the showers after all, but I think Neil Lennon found himself in a position where he's like, great, I've got the Celtic job again. Fantastic. I don't care. Back me or not, I've landed a top job here. I shouldn't be in this position. And he took it. And we bottled the 10, but I think it's a culmination of errors that maybe happened over the course of 3 or 4 years. Obviously Neil Lennon being one of the biggest parts of it, but can you directly blame him? I don't think so. Controversial it may be. Right, we're going to do 3 more quick fire to end it off, because I have just clocked how long we've actually been recording. Let's go for Regan saying we're going for 10 in a row. Well, you never know. Too early. But you never know. Need to see what happens across the other side of the road. Let's see. Scales a decent player, but would benefit in a different system with a more defensive midfielder in front of him. Nah, I don't agree. I don't know. It's hard. I don't want to be too harsh on Scalesy. I feel like we're all too harsh on him sometimes. But I don't think any. I mean, Callum McGregor is literally one of the best players he could have in front of him, especially at taking the ball and doing something with it, and it doesn't do much for him. So I don't necessarily agree with that. Palmer won't get a sniff this season. Brendan will get a winger in January. I don't think that's controversial, Shay. I really don't. And Adam Ida won't rise to be a striker that anyone would waste $8.5 million on. This is what I mean. Why are we all desperate for Ida to fail? Stop it. Let's end on a truly controversial opinion, shall we? Let's end on one that I think is very suitable to end a video of this manner on. Lawwell was the best thing to happen to Celtic since Fergus McCann, since the bonnet. Wow. That's one that will incite riots in my comment section and will have thoughts flowing all over the place. What a way to set folk off this one is. Lawwell, the best thing to happen to Celtic since Fergus McCann. Number one, I disagree. I do disagree. I think that when you look at some of the other key figures, look, if we're talking best thing to happen to Celtic, that means everything, doesn't it? That means any personnel. It doesn't have to be a boardroom personnel. It can be anybody. I mean, Martin O'Neill was a better thing to happen to Celtic. Brendan Rodgers was a better thing to happen to Celtic. I think there's been a few characters you could say were better things to happen to Celtic since Fergus McCann. Henrik Larsson happened after Fergus McCann. So, you know, there's a few people that you could say are the best thing to happen since Fergus. I certainly don't think it's Peter Lawwell, but I think the bigger and the wider point that's trying to be argued here is Peter Lawwell isn't as bad as what people make out. I think that's what Mr. Tim, I believe it's Mr. Tim is trying to say. And listen, there is no denying that Peter Lawwell has done a magnificent job at running Celtic Football Club at a business standpoint. You know, from a business point of view, we probably couldn't have a better person than Peter Lawwell, who was being our chief executive for as long as he was, now being chairman, because he's put Celtic into a position where we can laugh at our rivals, that we are getting a doubles as an absolute bog standard of success. You know, the treble is now like what we need to do every year to call it a successful season almost, isn't it? That's what it feels like. And that's down to the way that Peter Lawwell's run the club. He's recruited and bringing in managers and coaches and just generally how the club has navigated throughout the last 20 years. But I cannot agree with the sentiment that he's the best thing to happen since Fergus McCann, because Celtic Football Club could have and should have been in a much better place. Especially with what happened to Rangers, and especially watching what Rangers have accomplished since the appointment of Peter Lawwell. Rangers have been in 2 Europa League finals since the appointment of Peter Lawwell. 2008 in Manchester and 2022 in Seville. Celtic haven't won a fucking knockout tie. That's an embarrassment, and that is down to the lack of support that each of our managers who have been hired have had. And ultimately, Peter Lawwell was in charge of that as chief executive. We have held ourselves back. We have restricted ourselves from being the best version of Celtic that we possibly could be. And a lot of that is on the shoulders of Peter Lawwell. I will always respect and give credit for the success that he's delivered domestically and as a business, because we are now, you know, we're in a position where Celtic security is not even a matter of conversation. We don't need to worry about anything that Rangers have to worry about or had to worry about. And I'll always respect Lawwell for that, and I'll always give him his props, but I'll always be annoyed at what could have been. And I think if somebody with a little bit more ambition for the football club was in that same position and had the same business mind, and there's plenty of people out there, trust me, we could have maybe been there. So yeah, Mr. Tim, you do have a controversial opinion. Right, that does it for today then. If you have enjoyed, please make sure to hit like and subscribe. It would be much appreciated. That should be us for the controversial opinion series for now. But if you have enjoyed it and you want to see it more often when it is international breaks or whatnot, just let me know, because I've enjoyed filming it. But thank you. I appreciate it. Remember, you can join the 118 Club. You can do whatever. Take care. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and I'll see you all next time. Shout out to everybody who has joined the 118 Club or the Thunder Club thus far. Thank you for your continued support here on Ryan 118, and enjoy your moment of glory here on screen.